combative, and I kind of have this. I have this discussion. I gave a talk just before I came away at BCU for their creative networks. It's like, when did it become combative to make a film?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
don't demotivate the sound mixer. The very last thing you need is this demotivated sound mixer, because he's going to say, do you know what? You're going to get the sound that you deserve. I'm going to give you the sound that you're asking for. Well, you can't have that, because there's really only 3 people probably listening on the set, and the other 30 are looking. And it's you know, not that they don't care about the product, but it's just not in their psyche. It's not in their radar. It's a cultural thing, and so I'm really trying to come on, bang on about it, and sort of be evangelistic about, guys, what are you doing? This is 50% of your product. I was very lucky to meet and to chat with Gary Rydstrom, and he was talking about, I'm doing a PhD part-time, and that's just been fantastic in sound design, and particularly emotion in sound design. That's my take, and that's really the prime reason why I'm here in Australia at the moment. I'm taking 3 months to just kind of clear my head. I've been so busy and worked, and you know the kind of stuff. It's crazy,
Yeah.
But the point is that Gary Rydstrom said about doing Jurassic Park, where how much did the CGI cost? Millions and millions of dollars. And he does this great thing where he said, you know, it cost a few $100 for us to do the sound effects for Jurassic Park. $100. And it's like, when you say to folk, you know, if you really want to get bang for your buck, then look at how you can use sound to make your film much more effective. And the other thing that sort of strikes home is that from time to time I sit on juries of film festivals and short film and all that sort of stuff, and the first criteria that we judge on is the sound intelligible, and if it's not, it gets binned straight away, because it's you know, if it can't be broadcast at 7 o'clock on BBC One, then you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be calling yourself a professional. That's not a film. You're insulting the audience. So, you know, all of these kind of almost sort of shock jock tactics at the start of the talk is like, you know, would it be okay if I showed you how to make a better product and cheaper?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. You then pay attention to the sound.
Exactly. It's just so strange that it's. I don't quite know where it's come from, but the fact that everything, even institutionally, is kind of completely misrepresenting how things even used to be. It's now all about kind of the digital era. Everyone can do it. Just focus on what you want to do. Blah blah blah. And it's getting away from kind of the global focus of how things are going to be. So, but this is mainly fundamentally just aimed at other kind of sound professionals, just for the fact of also not having them kind of, well, for them to essentially have a better resource with a kind of more than one perspective, because more in whatever range of the sound kind of filmmaking community you're in, you're always going to kind of come in a slightly different way. You're kind of going to go about things slightly different way depending on who you work with and what you do.
And that is the joy of it, isn't it? Because, you know, I might suggest to you a certain way. Simon Hayes might suggest a certain way. You might have a pet way of doing it. And do you know what? If I'm the dubbing mixer and I get all 3 of those things in, each one of those could be perfect for my needs.
Exactly.
And it's just like, well, that's okay. That's okay. It's just tools in our toolbox, or paint on our palette, and what have you. Yeah. So it's really interesting. The thread on Sound Underground recently, I think it was yesterday, on the use of MS mics in booms for dialogue and all of that sort of stuff. It's like, oh no, don't go back there. I lived through that. It's just like, it was ridiculous at the time, but anyway. So it's good. I'm glad that, because Jeff Wexler commented on that, didn't he?
Yeah.
What are you doing, guys? So
came to the rescue. No, it's yeah. So it's tricky because people are still, and even kind of the forums and stuff. They're great for like having like one question, having one topic area, and discussing it. I want to try and build out a kind of the kind of sound chats is going to kind of be the kind of backbone, as it were, in terms of all these different people, all different walks of life, all different genres, all different amounts of experience, all just commenting kind of right here, right now on the industry as it's kind of going, and how things are kind of done, and what technology and gear they're using. And then off the back of that, then there would be more kind of courses and products specifically again on covering just time code or just certain manufacturers or something. I mean, I'm just trying to work with as many people as possible to try and just create kind of the biggest, I guess, overarching sound course that I could then even use to like put forward to universities and film schools in terms of having just this massive resource of support for their sound students. Because it's obviously when you're teaching about framing, or when you're teaching about kind of camera work, you can kind of understand the fundamentals of, okay, well, this is a nice frame because it's got this, 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 this. Whereas having good sound is in the perfect world, it's kind of very simple. But the problem is we don't have kind of perfect world, because obviously if I'm in a perfectly like anechoic chamber and I've got a mic like here and I'm trying to hit -20, well, it's not going to take me that long to understand that I just turning the gain up and down. But it's when we get into clothing, it's when we get into radio mics, it's when we get into like comms and IFBs and wireless and time code and syncing. So hopefully then build everything out like that. But obviously
it's a hard slog with the universities. They don't realize just how badly they serve the students for the sound. I mean, really, it's laughable. They don't.
Oh, I think you've oh, there you are.
We're all right. Are we still? My concern is that just before I came away, I replaced the battery in my laptop with one that's sort of over capacity, and I think the charging current is so hot in here. I don't know if I've done the right thing, and it's hot in Australia.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if it freezes, we can kind of go voice only on WhatsApp. So anyway, unis we could go on forever, but anyway, no, it's good, and I like how accessible the writing is on your site. It's very easy to read, and I like it very much. Good.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, it's So
how can I help? What is it that I can bring to the party?
Well, I mean, the whole point is again just kind of talking about your work, and we're kind of just get into what you think of various other departments and how you kind of collaborate and stuff, and that'll kind of be, it's just kind of like that. So this is very kind of like, it's kind of big picture with some kind of narrower stuff in between, basically. So yeah, we'll just kind of
well, just ask away, and I'll kind of say what I can. You may have to chop it about a bit.
Oh, that's fine. I keep it, again, because it's already so time intensive. I just kind of keep it as it is, unless things go really bad. But it's
okay. Well, I hope the picture holds. That's my only concern.
Be raw. Yeah, I might just like turn off my camera like this occasionally, and then maybe that'll help boost things up when you're when you're answering. So we'll just kind of get started, and I guess I'll do.
You can tell you whatever is best performance. I'm happy. I don't need to be looking. I'll imagine where your eyes are.
Awesome.
Is my eye line not too bad, or am I looking down too much?
No, I think your eye line's fine. Again, it's more about the content of it. It's literally that. Eventually, I might get round to doing more, but we'll see. I'm trying to speak at some events next year and try and take this kind of idea to kind of shows and stuff as well. So
good.
It's all good practice. But so I'll just kind of start with just doing kind of an intro to the whole thing, and then how long do you want it to do? How to do. I mean, I do have another one scheduled in about an hour and a half. So, I mean, anything around there. I don't want to take too much of your time. But again, these things do kind of fly by, I find, which is quite cool. That's all right. So I'm just going to kind of start with just kind of intro just to the start of the video again, because I don't kind of edit it, and then we'll get started and go from there. I just got to check that I'm not running anything, or I'm not going to crash my computer or something, and then we will get going. Okay, cool. Okay. Hey everyone, Matt from Soundrolling.com, and I'm here with Neil Hillman down in Australia, taking a vacation, as we'll get into in a sec. Hey Neil, how's it going?
Yeah, it's good, thank you. Hello, good day.
Good day indeed. And we're going to be talking all things kind of post-production in a way, because you've done kind of ADR, you've done re-recording, mixing, sound design, composition. You kind of cover the whole bag of tricks in the post end, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's how desperate I am as a freelancer.
It's brilliant. Keeps things exciting. Some of the films that you've done, let me see, because it's always good to just throw in some from the old IMDb, such as kind of Lincoln, which did ADR for, and more recently things like Scott and Sid as a sound mixer, which is cool. So you're also doing the post side as well. So let's just get straight into what you're currently doing at the moment down in Australia.
Okay, well, I'm taking 3 months out at the moment. I worked really quite hard this year, 2015. Scott and Sid, as you said, that was doing the location sound for that, which was brilliant fun, but you know, very taxing as these things are. And I should be looking at the post for that as well. But I'm also researching a PhD part-time. Emotion in Sound Design is actually the title of it, at York University. And I've been working on it for 6 years now, so this is my 6th year. And so it's time to start putting some thoughts in a more concrete fashion down. So I'm here to escape what I would normally be doing and take 3 months to just write my thesis and really get my head together as to quite what it is that I want to say about the research that I've been doing.
Fantastic. And that research is just mainly based on the kind of sound design, or what's the kind of general question that you're trying to answer?
Well, it's a PhD by practice, because one of the things that I'm really interested to do is to provide a bridge between the academic and the practitioner. I think there's a huge gulf for various reasons, but there's a massive gulf between the practitioner and the academic. But there are some, particularly in the US, some fantastic pieces of work being done by great practitioners. I mean, Walter Murch has for a long time been very sort of academic in the way that he shares the kind of work that he does, and Gary Rydstrom too. And there are people like David Sonnenschein as well, and they were an inspiration to me to sort of think, well, actually, not from an ego point of view, I think that my work is fantastic, but just actually it's quite interesting the time that I've spent in the industry, and how the industry has developed, and the way that I work and operate in the industry. And I kind of wanted to reflect on that. And when I started drilling down on quite what it was, I kept coming back to emotion in sound design, about how I could influence the way in which viewers would react to the pictures, and to reinforce those pictures as well. So it's all based around sound rather than the music that can drive emotion along, because that's pretty well documented. You know, we can put things in a major key and we can be very happy, or we put it in a minor key, but I'm really interested in how we can use natural sound, into the real sound that we would hear in our everyday life without a soundtrack. I kind of feel that the music tells us how we should be feeling. And actually what I'm interested in developing as a sound designer is some techniques where the audience can engage with it, and they might feel different ways about the same scene, but it's because of their interaction with it. So it's much more immersive and interactive than ever it would be with just music telling them how to feel at this point and how to feel at this point. So if you were to say, I would like the audience to feel this at this point, then ideally we would try for that. But what we would definitely do would be to have them engaged so that either their past experiences would say, oh, I remember how I felt when this happened to me, or if I were in this position, this is how I would feel. It's that sort of level of engagement that I'd like to get into my sound design, rather than just the pure, well, here's some bird song, so everything's cool, or here's some thunder, uh-oh, something's about to happen. So those kind of things. But both of those are very good signposts. But I wanted to sort of try and discover if I could engage with an audience in a slightly different way. And there's quite a lot of academic research about it, and there's quite a bit of stuff with gaming as well. And I thought this would be really interesting if we could sort of drive this along the sort of moving picture sound. So that's. Have we frozen?
Oh, we did slightly freeze. So you just finished on ending with engaging with the soundtrack. I think it's a really interesting idea, just because of the fact that I mean, filmmaking in general is still a pretty young industry by most standards, and even sound design and all the recent tools and digital and effects plugins and stuff. It feels like we should be again kind of advancing from our classic signposts of birds and music. I was always of a similar ilk of just trying to get more sound effects and sound design, kind of minus music, wherever I could, just because I was never kind of big into. I never really had kind of a strong music background, so I just played to my strengths of just trying to get a more convincing kind of sort of world for the kind of projects that I was doing. But it is very interesting how we would, or how sound design and kind of, I guess, storytelling in a way is going to keep advancing and evolving as more and more people are obviously subjected to the type of filmmaking, and obviously video is making a massive kind of, not comeback, but evolution, I guess, in terms of it's playing so many roles in terms of education, in terms of entertainment, in terms of all sorts of genres, that it's really getting into everyone's kind of surroundings. And so how we can tell better stories is always going to win the day in the end.
I think we're fundamentally storytellers, and we're telling a story, and it's sort of it's not too dissimilar to sort of caveman TV, which is, you know, the flickering pictures there, we're sort of sitting around a campfire. I think that you know, the basic premise is people love stories. We do. It's timeless. They're stories that we can relate to, and it's a really very powerful form of communication.
And so let's get back to kind of, I guess, how it started for you, and in terms of your career and getting involved in sound.
Well, I did electronics at university. My first degree is in electronics. But at Aston University, I got involved with university radio, and I found that, you know, to go back into industry, which was machine tools that I was working in, was just not exciting enough for me. I felt compelled to work towards sound, and then I did some unpaid work helping at BBC Radio Birmingham, which then became BBC Radio WM, just for a very short time. But I realised that actually the sound wasn't enough in itself. That wasn't the satisfying part. The satisfying part was actually marrying sound to pictures. And I joined Central Television in 1982. An amazing time to join the industry, because it was absolutely on the cusp. Portable video cameras were still not considered high enough quality to sustain long scenes. So, for instance, 16mm Arriflex cameras were the norm, and we had a film department that was as big as our video department. So I learned to be a film sound recordist, to be an assistant first of all, obviously, but to be a recordist with Nagras, to work as a film dubbing mixer, as an assistant dubbing mixer. So film, from the very beginning of my career, was ingrained in my workflow and my headspace, and the way that the way that I thought about pictures, which was kind of strange working at a television station, because I then obviously had that side by side, and it ran almost in parallel. That there was a television station, but actually, if you were part of the film department, it very much worked, and you would work with freelancers who would be working one week at Pinewood or at Elstree or at Shepperton, and these stories and this folklore, you know, would be passed on to you, and this craft and the folklore of the craft, and I developed this absolute love and passion for what I was doing, because I was working with passionate people all the time. And even to this day, I find it really strange to work with people who are in an industry and they're not passionate about what they do. It's very difficult for me to sort of relate to people if they're not passionate. You know, as a dubbing mixer, if you expect me to be passionate about your project, I would expect that you're passionate about your own project too. And sometimes I did a very long running television series, which was a sort of a factual, and it became Sausage Factory for those people. It wasn't for us when we were post producing it, and each one would be crafted very, very carefully. But it was we did 250 shows of it, but for the producers, and it just all became Sausage Factory, and in the end we had, do you know what? I think it's probably time for somebody else to do this. We've proven that we can do a couple of hundred shows and maintain very tight broadcast deadlines, etc., etc. But actually, this working to ridiculous tight deadlines, it's not exciting anymore, because the reason why is not because we're putting in some brand new material that we've just come across as fantastic. It's actually because there's huge inefficiencies, and that's not exciting. That's just inefficient. And so my experience of working on long form drama is that it's rather more thought through. It is by people who are passionate and committed about what they're doing as well, and it just kind of sits very well with me. So I've sort of gravitated towards long form sort of drama now. But my background with working in television and at Central Television as well was fantastic background, where I was trained in all aspects of studio operations, news mixing, ENG news recording, as it was in those days, film location, outside broadcasts, Fisher boom operator, and every bit of it I really enjoyed. And all that I did when I decided to go freelance was I just used all of those skills and advertised that I had all of those skills, and I would go towards that, because that job would come in, and then that job would come in, and it was a difficult time. So I went freelance in about 1990, and it was one of the first sort of huge redundancies from the television industry. And everybody was undercutting everybody else, and it was very, very difficult. But at least I've got several bases covered, and so I could go from that to that to that to that. And at first it was just sort of economic common sense. But then I realized that operationally I quite enjoyed this, and I've sort of refined it now to something that I call organic and free range sound engineering. So I just kind of go where a project will take me, and ideally I enjoy the overarching responsibility and creative input to something. So in a perfect world, I would be the location recordist, and I would also be supervising sound editor, sound designer, however the fashion dictates. And I've got a couple of colleagues who I've worked very closely with, who have you can't do that on your own. It's not possible to do it on your own. But for instance, when I work as a re-recording mixer, I work with Pip Norton, who many people will know Pip, and we tend to work in air. That works for us very well. But I couldn't do that without someone who's absolutely trusted and a right hand person. And she is my right hand person, because she sits on the right of the desk. That's generally how it works. But that for me is that's perfection. It's taken me this number of years, 30 odd years, to get to the point where I truthfully now, not because I can afford it, but I truthfully now only work on projects with people that I like, and on projects that I feel I can believe in and I can commit to, because I become obsessed with delivering what the promise of that program or that film is, and I'll just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And And if the director or a producer chooses not to take my advice, then that's absolutely fine. It's not my film, it's their film. But I do think that it's my job to be coming up with, have you thought about this? What about this? What do you think about this? I don't care if you don't like it, just listen to it. If you like it, you're okay. And it's that kind of, and with people that you know, that can be a hugely creative process. But if it's someone who doesn't really care or get what you're doing, then it's really banging your head against a wall. And after 30 something years, I kind of just, I've taken off the backpack. I've set myself free. Said, do you know what? I'm only going to work with people.
Oh, we had another little blip there, but you're only gonna work with people that kind of love and respect the work just as much as you do.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. That sounds a bit sort of high and mighty, hoity-toity. I don't mean it to sound like that, but truthfully, you know, I'm being truthful with you. In my heart of hearts, that really is how I'm selecting projects.
Yeah, I think it makes the most sense for everyone, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not like we live like the Beckhams.
Yeah.
It comes at a cost. But actually, I just feel cleaner. I feel cleaner, and I feel better about myself and the way that I'm operating by doing that. So projects that I attach to now, I'm 100% behind them. You know, I'm not just taking the dollar.
Fantastic. It's really interesting just to hear about the spell of when there were redundancies and kind of the 90s, and how I wonder what your thoughts are about that kind of being a bit cyclical in terms of now more and more there's kind of even more fragmentation, and there's still the kind of the issues all the time about people undercutting and all those kind of posts about, well, back in the day it would have been equivalent to this much money, and what are your kind of thoughts on where the industry is heading in terms of a more freelance based world as opposed to an institutional place which has maybe a more solid culture, like the people you were working with originally that had such a strong passion and that was kind of institutionalized?
I think it is cyclical, definitely. I think it goes in sort of 10-year sort of sunspots. That I think that's how it kind of comes around. I think we're definitely on the sort of third round of what I've been involved in. So fees, rates, all of that sort of stuff, you know, the discussions that we have amongst ourselves, you know, in private and in public. I've sort of been there quite a few times, and the same thing kind of keeps coming round again, which is about a sense of self-value and self-worth. And you kind of need to hold firm to your views on, you know, am I worth this? Are we as an industry or as a collective worth this? Because you are undermining the collective. It's not just you. So, and then you temper that with, actually, that's fine. I've just gone freelance. I'm a young dad. I've got, you know, kids to feed and all of that sort of stuff. It is really, really difficult. There's not a diktat that you can just put straight across the board. And everybody, you have to rely on people's conscience to do the right thing. Some people will, and they'll do it at extraordinary cost to themselves. Some people won't, and at the first opportunity, they will score points and take a job. But you know, it's a small industry. I think what goes around comes around. I'm a very, very strong believer in karma. You need to do the right thing. You need to be doing the right thing. And so, as far as rates are concerned, we've got guideline rates. They're a minimum. So if you think that you're worth more, then that's great. But I do think that there is a collective duty to uphold that. Otherwise, we're sort of demeaning each other. It doesn't help. I feel pretty strongly about that, as you can tell.
No. I think it's a very hard thing to kind of hit on the head, and it's just interesting hearing about how I guess it's happening in every other industry as well. But I suppose particularly since things. No, I'm trying to think of, like, I suppose the biggest industry that it's kind of hit, I guess, is kind of music, in terms of what they've managed to do is just turn it into a complete kind of commodity in a way, and so that's completely undermined and completely oversaturated the kind of market of musicians and composers. But in the same vein, you can still get people that obviously break through and have hits, and so it's just that same ongoing battle of trying not to trivialize and commoditize the work that we do, but still be able to back it up with the value and kind of investment that we've put in to justify, and not just be like, well, we've always charged this. This is what it's always been, and without bringing anything new to the table. So I think with the technology and with all the techniques, that's obviously the value has obviously increased, both to us in terms of the benefit of production costs coming down, but also in terms of how much you can output in terms of just radio mic reliability and all of the rest.
Well, I think the kit is a really interesting point to talk about. Let's talk about location sound.
Yeah.
This was always the case, that you would have a standard kit of, let's say, a 416, an SQN. I'm not an SQN man. I'm an audio developments man. So 416, a mixer, and probably a couple of radio mics. So that was the very basic. If you were doing, any sort of telework and you were engaged just for magazine kind of programs or corporate or that sort of stuff, that was a basic kit, and that's fine because it would be charged at such and such, and that would be the benchmark. And then if people wanted extra kit, then they would have to pay for that, and that was fair enough. But what I noticed, and it's sort of irritating, that we've kind of brought a lot of this stuff on ourselves, because a recordist would turn up and he'd say, oh, well, actually, I've got a timecode DAT, or I've got a Sony Pro Walkman. Would you like me to do a transcription copy? Because I can throw that in for you if you like, and that'll make me more attractive to this production company because they like doing that. And I do think that there has been sort of this thing about people turning up hideously over-equipped for something that is a 350 quid job, and it's like, what are you thinking of? And I've observed it, and it started way back in the 90s when we all first went freelance. It's like, production have now expected that that's thrown in. Oh, look, can we have a radio link? Can we have a? Well, yeah, you can, and this is how much it costs, because you buy me, and then what equipment do you want? I can help you to spec that. But honestly, there are sound recordists, and we're all a bit guilty of it. I hoard kit. I've got kit that I just, I can't get rid of. It's just so amazing. I still regret selling my timecode Nagra. But, folk turn up and they are bristling. And I look now at the bags that people carry, and there's so much stuff in it, and it's just mad. It's just madness, and they're doing it all without an assistant, and it's just. I sustained quite a bad back from 5 years of working on the Antiques Roadshow, where I boomed everything, and I had radio links to the camera, a radio sort of an IFB setup for the director. But I hate radio mics. I hate radio mics, the sound of them and what have you, and the faff of them. So I boomed everything. And you imagine we would shoot Digibeta days. We would shoot 10 tapes in a day. They were 30-minute tapes, what have you. So I'd have my arms up in the air for a good part of that day. I ended up looking like, I did 5 series. I looked like Tarzan at the end of it. A great upper body. But my back, with the bag hanging forward and trying to counteract it and what have you, I've permanently ruined some bit of my spine from doing that. And I see young blokes now, and we see photos on the forums. Hey, look at my bag today. Look at my bag, and it's just like, this is the wrong way. This is the wrong way that we're going about this. Get an assistant. There's a better way of doing this than just packing.
No, completely. And it's interesting because it's some of the kit is obviously making our lives easier as well. And so a lot of people will be like, well, I'll bring that along for you, but it would also make it my job a bit easier in terms of X, Y, and Z. I know.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, so for my bag, for instance, because I've got a 688, which is fine for doing kind of the bigger junkets that I do, or when I'm kind of recording from a desk or something like that. But then it does get a bit trickier when you're trying to do like a short film, and ideally you need like a 633, and you could easily shed like 2-3 kilos off your bag. But you have to kind of invest another $6,000 for that. So it's tricky. But in terms of like back support, I mean, I just wear like a back brace now permanently without, even though I'm fine, it's like it's still just trying to protect my back as much as possible. Kind of do all that stretching.
Listen to us discussing this. You know, that we're having to take this physical, you know, health and safety, workplace, you know. Can you think of other industries where we would be having this kind of discussion where, you know, we have to do this? This is the sort of the discussion of people who are passionate and desperate to do the best thing and the right thing, but, you know, at physical cost to themselves. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's mad. And going back to kind of our earlier comments about how then the kind of culture of it is that you're kind of overlooked and undervalued at the same time. It just seems like a crazy lose-lose situation in a way, which is a bit sad.
I think there can be a situation, and interestingly, at home, I'm just refitting the mixing rooms at home, and I'm actually doing away with the mixing surface, because I think that when we turn up on location, we're regarded as sort of boffins, and we know what we're doing, and the equipment looks very complicated. It is very complicated, and, you know, we are pretty clever guys at what we do. We use the equipment very sensibly and well and what have you, and we do things that, you know, a lot of other people can't do. That's just because we do what we do. We can't do what other people do. So I'm not saying that we're better than other people. I'm just saying that there is a perception when you turn up with a sound trolley, or you turn up with a bag full of bits and what have you, you know, it's bristling like the flight deck of an A380. There's a certain barrier that kind of sets up. And certainly from a mixing point of view, I can't get around it when we're actually doing the final theatrical mix. But, you know, when we're track laying, or we're doing scratch mixes or doing temp mixes and what have you, I kind of like the idea that the picture editors, and I've been thinking for some time, why is it that directors have such a kind of a sort of a cozy relationship with the picture editor, and they sit and they drink coffee and they do sort of stuff, you know? What is it that we're doing? And we stick this massive piece of equipment in between us and the screen, and we get the director to either sit behind us, or sometimes we allow them to sit alongside us, but they don't know what all of those buttons do, and, you know, it's very intimidating. So I kind of want to go, let's get rid of all of that, because I can have a little controller here, just like the picture editor does. And you can sit here and not intimidated. So the going on where we've got, you know, we're bristling with equipment and what have you, we're sort of sometimes appearing too clever for our own good. It's the more kit we turn up with, the more that production expect this will just happen, and you know, there we
go. But it is. It's the ongoing interesting argument as well of you only have you're within limits in terms of picture and in terms of picture edits. You've only shot so much. You can only do so much in post production. You've only planned to do this. Yeah, you can kind of. There's always obviously exceptions to the rule in terms of CGI and stuff. But then when you enter a kind of world of sound in a way, because there are no limits, there's kind of no concept of where to go, I guess, and a lot of people are maybe, well, especially directors, I guess, when you present them with a kind of unlimited, in a way, possibilities, it's very, very kind of daunting especially when they haven't thought about or haven't been taught about or ever had to kind of consider, even from a script base, what the film is going to sound like and what they're going to be able to do, again, like your kind of thesis, to impact the audience in a new way that's completely different from just the birds and the bells. So,
well,
but
yeah, all sort of all directors are different, and it's their film, and they kind of do what they need to do, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's just interesting thoughts. And so in terms of, because it's very interesting as well, just to pick on you're kind of very similar to me as well, I think, because I started in film school doing kind of more post-production, but to be honest, I got sick of fixing other people's problems. And so I decided to do location stuff.
That's hitting the nail on the head. Yeah, that's absolutely hitting the nail on the head for me. That it's really disheartening to work really, really hard in post-production and to get something out of nothing, but it's still poor. And nobody says, "Oh man, that is so much better than when it came into you." They never say that at all. It's like, we've paid hand and this is what we've got. And you want to say to people, look, you've got to originate the sound in the best possible way that you can. How do you get that message across? Maybe it's an outreach program that all of us, we should be, evangelizing, and maybe amps could help in this. Maybe MPSE could help with this. I think we just need to be much more out there and telling people that you've got to originate good sound, because you can't fix everything in post. You just can't. And it's quite interesting because I did a film, and what sort of decided me to kind of go along the route of I'll pass the ball to myself where I can, was I was asked to work on a micro budget film, and would I do the location recording and would I do the sound design and post production? And the post production budget was sensible. It was okay. It was sensible, but the location recording was, well, I can't even get my kit on the job for that. Oh, no, we're being very democratic. We're all being paid exactly the same. So, well, okay, now it's not for me. So if that's okay, I'm happy to do the post, but I'm not going to do the production sound for you. But I'm very, very concerned who will do it for that amount of money, because I just don't know anyone in my circle. I just don't know anyone who would do it for that amount of money. So they did do that. They did do that. They sacked the first sound recordist after 2 weeks, and the second sound recordist delivered some stuff. And I can tell you, truthfully, I ADR'd every single line.
Wow.
Every single line. It took 10 months because of actor availability, and all this sort of stuff. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. The annoying thing was it didn't really cost them any more money, because we had a bit of a to and fro over how much ADR is reasonable ADR to go into a film. And I said, look, when we said we'd do post and there will be some need for ADR, it was not we would need to ADR the whole film. But anyway, so I did ADR the whole film, and it was an interesting exercise. But it really
Oh, we just had a little break up there. Was it that it would just be so much easier? Is that what you were saying?
Oh, so where did we break off?
It was just before. It would be so much easier, I think you were going to say.
Oh, okay. It would just be so much easier if they did just employ, really, for not that much more money, someone who was proficient in location sound. It's really basic. How can we possibly be having this conversation? But we do. We have to have this conversation.
Yeah. No, it's sad. And with the,
I'm not sure that the production learned anything from it, really, because we just Pip and I fixed it between us, and it was a very, very good film, given what came into us. I mean, just amazing. So anyway, there we are.
No, it's really interesting that, I mean, I think we all have these stories as well, in terms of anyone that's worked on either, because I've done films where I've done the location sound and then they've done it the other way around. They've then not spent anything on post-production. or post-production sound specifically. And so what's ended up happening is that you literally just have raw tracks, you just have things that are not properly mixed, and it's just, as a location sound recordist, you're like, well, yeah, it sounds good as my recordings, but it's really like not, like I can hear everyone, but I can also hear the cuts. I can also hear this is obviously a film as opposed to, again, like a story, which is...
I have all of these strange analogies that go through my head, you know. It's like, well, the cameraman is the surgeon, but, you know, you would not operate. We teach film schools, let's mention that, medical school.
Oh, I think, sorry.
I've unfrozen. Okay, I've unfrozen. I can start again. So,
yeah.
So I have these crazy analogies that, you know, if the cameraman is the surgeon, then, you know, the sound recordist is his anaesthetist. You wouldn't possibly think about doing operations without having, you know, the sort of complementary skill alongside, or, you know, the students that we teach in film school. Well, you know, if it were a medical school, would you only teach them from the waist down? You know, 50% of the product is sound, and I know that we're preachers are converted with this audience, but it is kind of strange, isn't it? It really is.
And so let's get on to, I guess, what I guess more into some of the work that you've done on, say, on Lincoln, let's say, and how you got involved in terms of both getting on board with the project and who were you working with, because you were mainly focused on the ADR and the ADR mixing.
Yeah, so I just recorded ADR. I replaced all of Gulliver McGrath's lines. He was Tad Lincoln, and really this is really talking up my role in all of this. But it was probably the best experience I've ever had in my time working in film, and that was working with John Knoll at Skywalker, and we linked via ISDN to John. And I just learned so much from him, and I guess really in the way in which he treated me, I was somewhat in awe. So let's go back a stage. I was sitting in my mixing theatre, and the facility manager rang through, and I normally don't take phone calls. You know, when I'm mixing, I just don't want any disturbance at all. That would take my ears away from where I'm at. Yep. And anyway, the phone call came through, and she said, "I've got DreamWorks on the phone," and I was about to say something. She said, "No, really, don't be funny. I've got DreamWorks." Because, you know, we would normally do at the end of our shifts when we'd finish, you know, we'd all be sort of sitting around having the last coffee in the reception area, you know, as you do before you go home. And if the phone would ring at, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night, we'd all shout, "If that's Mr. Spielberg, just tell him we're too busy right now." You know, so we would joke about that. And she says, "No, genuinely, I've got the post-production supervisor from DreamWorks on the phone. He wants to have a word with you." And so the artist was going to be in the UK. They particularly wanted not to be in town. They wanted to be out of London, and would we be able to do some ADR? Yes, we would. Okay, would we speak to Skywalker, who were looking after the post? So I got a phone number for a guy called Jonathan Knoll, and gave him a ring. And so he said, "Hey, you know, how's it going? We need to record this one character. How do you think you would mic it?" So I said, "Well, you know, I'll mic it however you want it to be mic'd, but I particularly like to have a large diaphragm microphone just at the side of the artist's face, as well as, you know, a boom, as well as a personal. I think it gives a good extra balance." You know, I'm chatting away, and "Oh, right, this is really, yeah, that's cool. Well, okay, yeah, we could try that." Really open and receptive to it. And so we agreed that that's probably how we would start, and put the phone down. And then I looked Jonathan up and saw the work that he'd done, and I thought, I can't believe that I've just told this bloke, you know, how to do his session and all of that. And he was just so humble and so collaborative. I thought that's the way to work, isn't it? That is just, it was so inspirational. And then so it was a small part to do. It was only one of, we were a tiny bit. It's a great credit to have, of course, and I'm very, very proud of it. But the way in which John conducted the ADR session over ISDN, when the artist felt that he couldn't perform in a certain way, and John would just very gently come in, and it was just an absolute privilege to to sort of work alongside people who were so humble and so open to you giving them input. And I thought, if these are absolutely top of the shop, which they are, and they can be so accommodating and listening to my point of view, why can't everybody be like that? And it sort of forever changed the way in which I wanted to work. So doing something where a producer wasn't particularly interested in this television program and would tell me how it should sound and all that sort of stuff, it kind of, really? Okay, maybe I should be doing something other than that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really, really great experience, and another thing, Anthony Minghella died after shooting his part of New York, I Love You, and which was Julie Christie playing against John Hurt, and Sheila LaBeouf is in as well. And that was always shot that everything would be ADR'd. So they shot it so they knew right from the start that they were going to replace everything. But Julie Christie, truthfully, is the one artist that I've worked with in ADR where the hairs on my arms have stood up, because she has just interpreted the character just incredible. And that's what an Oscar-winning actress does, isn't it? It's just amazing. So I had such respect for the way in which she carried on her craft. She was amazing, brilliant to work with, but so on top of the process and what was needed, and just brilliant. And again, we were linked. I can't remember where we linked to there via ISDN. But anyway, so yeah, that experience of working with Julie Christie, again, working with people who are absolutely at the top of their game, it's inspiring, absolutely inspiring.
And with the so with a normal kind of ADR session, what's your kind of involvement? Are you kind of serving as an in between for the director and the actor, or are you like what do you feel your role is kind of as an ADR kind of recordist and mixer?
It varies. It varies on production. So sometimes I will be just a facilitator, because there will be a director there, there will be a dialogue editor there.
Okay.
And my job there is to just engineer, if you like. And ADR is probably as busy as you're ever likely to be in post-production. It's really it can be quite stressful, because you never want to be waiting for the sound mixer. You need to be ahead of it, but each time you're stacking up the takes, you're keeping a track of which of the circle takes. It's a busy thing, then director might want some playback, so you put in some before the session starts. I'll try to find some background, so we can just do you want to listen to that voice bedded in a little bit to some background, so you can offer that, or it can just be clean. Dialogue editors often will just want it clean. Sometimes I do a heck of a lot of unattended ADR sessions, and that's really just from, I guess, word of mouth, where a dialogue editor has recommended me. They've got what they needed, and because I also dialogue edit, and I kind of understand what they'll need. So I kind of I'm a chameleon. I'll sort of just move around and do what's necessary.
Amazing. It's really interesting, because I've only spoke to one other person who's kind of done ADR mixing, and also their involvement in kind of Waller. Do you ever get involved in Waller groups as well?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, they sound so much fun as well, that it's only kind of 6 people kind of filling out a whole shopping mall or a stadium.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I tend to just be doing focused key dialogue, but yeah, it's great fun.
And so in terms of who else you work with for post-production? Because obviously you can't do everything yourself, although we definitely all like to. Who else?
Some films you kind of have to, but if they're tiny micro, and then obviously the time has to extend.
Yeah. But who else is in your team, or who else are your kind of go-to people for helping you complete a picture?
Well, my starting point is Pip Norton. Pip and I have sort of known each other quite a while now, and folk will vary in different departments, depending on what their availability is. You know, sometimes there's a wealth of talent available, and then other times, you know, something's come in and loads of people have been taken up by a particular project. So, but the core of it is Pip and I. The first thing that I'll do is get in touch with Pip and say, look, I've been offered this project. Are you interested in it? Do you fancy it? I think this is how it could work for us. So that really is my starting point.
Fantastic. Well,
and then obviously for location, I have Johnny Boom is my preferred boom operator, John Boothroyd, and you know, a fine recordist in his own right, but we just get on very well together and work very well as a team. We're very supportive. We have our own sort of good cop, bad cop routine that kind of works on location.
Nice.
So I pretty much leave him to sort of run the floor, as it were, and only if he's really having some grief, and I don't need him to go too far down that road of having grief, I'll kind of sidle in and just have a word, and that works very well for us. But otherwise, John is very good. He's a very personable person. You know, that role of a boom operator is so important. I can't emphasize how important that is for a mixer. You can't do anything as a mixer unless you've got people putting the right microphone in the right place at the right time. It's really very basic, but you know, it makes a difference between it being a joy or being an absolute pain to sort of get through the day. You absolutely need to have someone who's there rock solid for you.
And in terms of because obviously going back and forth from kind of location and then doing from post-production to location back to post-production, what are the kind of things that you've taken from post-production in terms of things like room ambience or any kind of wild tracks? How's your post-production work kind of inferred on your location work in terms of not only saving yourself time, but maybe capturing performances and delivering a better overall film? We appear to have paused again. Oh dear. Unfortunately, everyone, we are experiencing technical difficulties. So maybe I will edit this one. Hello? Neil, are you there? Well, I'm not sure what has happened. So my apologies for the delay. The internet is obviously slowing down around the world. Maybe the magnetic field is flipping already. Well, I think he's dropped out to come back in, so should be back with us momentarily. If I do forget to edit this, by the way, could you please post a comment below? Because I do mean to chop out this section of me just rambling in the dark. But I'll take this opportunity to thank you for watching so far. I think we've still got a good 10-15 minutes left to try and cover a few more areas. And of course, thanks for supporting soundrolling.com. And if you have any other kind of questions, you can post them as comments, and I'll try and follow them up with either Neil or other people in the same field, just to kind of give people better context and better content. Aha. Hello. Oh. Unfortunately, he's dropped out again. I don't know if it's just because the internet is going strange. Let's go to audio only and see what happens. If you've just joined us, we are currently experiencing some technical difficulties, but hopefully it should be back up soon. If you have any questions, you can post them as a comment at the side or below, depending where you're seeing this. And yeah, hopefully we can get back up and running soon. I think Neil might send me a message soon saying if he's given up. Although the internet always just goes a bit strange at 10 o'clock. Maybe it's my internet. You can tell I don't do. Oh, yeah. The problem is I can't end the session yet because then I have to start a whole new one. This is a slight flaw in the Google Hangouts realm. Okay. So we just got to email a new one to Neil. And do remember that if I completely forget to edit this out, to put in the comments, because I think a lot of people get very annoyed that I'm just rambling. Let's see. Da da da. Hmm.